Good afternoon, everyone. We are joined here by Tom Ackerman, a three-time SLIAC Coach of the Year. Tom, thank you for joining us today to talk a little bit about SLIAC All-Decade Volleyball Team.
My pleasure.
My first question for you is, two of the players early in the decade for Greenville, Crane Kuhn and Jessica Diehl, could you talk a little about them as the decade started?
Yeah, for sure. So when you say those two names, automatically what comes to mind is the physical work and the contribution in the weight room that those two were willing to put in and willing to contribute. So Jessica actually stayed here in the summer before her junior and senior year, and she transformed her body, got herself just physically able to compete. And then Corinne coming as a freshman, it was just kind of in her DNA. So she was a track and field athlete, probably was a better sprinter, hurdler, possibly than she was a volleyball player. That was kind of her family DNA. And so she came in with that mindset of working physically to get better at things. During that time, those two both watched over and over the 2009 film of us losing by 2 in the conference championship to go to the NCAA tournament. So they understood what it meant of how close we came as a team in 2009, and then to set the tone for literally a decade after that. But those two are just premier players. Kuhn was a newcomer of the year, but she did not actually start for us. So she actually came off of the bench late in the match when we were running out of gas and just gave us a spark to win several big-time matches. So those two definitely put in the work outside of the gym. Physically is kind of where they transformed themselves into those players.
And I think that's something that we'll see as we talk about more of these all-decade players. It's that additional drive, that work ethic they have off the court that really takes them to that next level.
I'll add real quick, Jessica Diehl, we did not travel her with our varsity her freshman year. So she was our first player of the year and the only back-to-back player of the year that we've had, but we didn't travel her freshman year. She didn't like that. She didn't like that at all. So she responded pretty good.
See, keep that in mind, student athletes out there. I know when I first arrived to the conference, one of the first players that caught my attention was Allison Mitchell. She was just one of the best all-around players I've ever seen on the court. Can you talk about her game a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. I would say, the thing about Allison was she had the ability to hurt you in every aspect of the game. So for us, we didn't play her in 6 rotations her first year that she was here. She only played 3 rotations. She didn't respond well to that. She wanted to be in 6 rotations. And so then her sophomore, junior, and senior year, she worked herself in that. Whereas the other two before that really put the time in the gym, in the weight room, she put her time in the gym. So I would literally have to say, hey, I have to go home and have dinner. I cannot spend another minute doing serve receive reps with you. I'm sorry. Maybe somebody else can, but I got to go home. So she would live in the gym. Like when I would get there, she was there. When I left, she was there. So she put in more time than anybody else. And she just had this perfectionist mentality about her. I know another player that you're going to talk a lot about here is Hannah Marshall. And Hannah Marshall was the best thing that ever happened to Allison Mitchell. So those two, it was back and forth who was in the top of the rankings in different categories. But Allison really monitored and knew before I did. She would tell me, hey, did you see what Hannah did this week? Did you see what Hannah did this week? And so she really was motivated by that. So I started letting her kind of hear about what past players have done in her position. She just wanted to be the best. And I think at this point I can go on record and saying in my 22 years, she is the single best volleyball player that we've ever had, in all the skills. So she could really do it all and hurt you in a lot of ways. If you're going to start a team for us, that's probably my first pick. So she really had a great career. In the conference tournament, when we were down 0-2 to West Min at West Min, I don't remember what year that was. You might remember. I don't remember. But I said to her, hey, I don't know if you're done. It was her senior year. I said, I don't know if you're done, but do you have one more bus ride in you? Because if you don't, this is it. That's fine. But if you got one more bus ride in you, you need to turn it on. And then she just took over that match. She was unstoppable.
You wanted that one more, that bus ride, that trip to Subway or wherever you guys go.
Yeah, that's right.
A lot of times defensive players can kind of get overlooked. I think one of the heart and soul of your teams was Jamie Schellenbrook, a two-time Defensive Player of the Year winner. Can you talk a little bit about Jamie?
Yeah, Jamie is probably my favorite kid ever to coach because she really understands volleyball at like the next level. So she's coaching collegiate sand volleyball in California right now. So like she just gets it. She understands it. She would come to my office and just watch film after film after film. So she would say, hey, when we played Webster, when they're in row one and this kid's on the outside, we need to do this defensive scheme. Why don't you put me here and I'll dig this ball? And I would just say, wow, yeah, let's go with that. That's a really good idea. So it got to the point where, you know, she was giving me stuff. She would call the changes defensively on the court and just kind of tell me what we were going to do. And I never really gave her much pushback. In addition to that, I could really push her and motivate her at a different level than I could some of the other girls on our team. So I held her to a little bit of a higher standard. And she just really excelled in that area. I don't know if the volleyball world knows this about her much, but she went to the NCAA tournament in volleyball in the fall. In the winter, she went to the NCAA tournament as a significant role player on our basketball team. And the next fall, she came back, ended up starting for our women's soccer program, and we thought they were going to go to the NCAA tournament as well. So this is one of our premier athletes. You know, she's a Hall of Famer. Really probably my favorite kid to coach as far as volleyball goes. She's a rare breed in that area, but just a huge, just super high level IQ for her. So really fun, and I miss having her in the gym for sure.
From one two-time Defensive Player of the Year to the more recent one, Kristen Farah of Webster University. What did you see from her the last couple of years?
Yeah. Above all else, what a great teammate. I mean, when you just watch her interact with her team and her coaches and the other coaches after the game, just what a great human and what a great teammate. You're always noticing the kids that you design a game plan around, right? So we never missed where she was at on the court. So here's where she is, and this is where we don't want to attack. So when we attack in this area, we're only going to score this percentage of times. If we attack, zone 5 and zone 6, different zones, are we able to score more because she's not in them? That means you're a really, really good player, right? And so she just had a phenomenal career. I would say as far as the SLIAC goes, I mean, she's, statistically speaking and national recognition, she'd be up there in the top 3 to 5, no question, in the history of the SLIAC. So what a great player and what a great human. So it was fun to play against her. We really enjoyed that.
Book you mentioned there in the record books. If you look in the record books now, at the top 10 kills leaders, 6 of them are on this all-decade team, which shows you the influx of talents over the last 10 years. Yeah. What do you think, and those players, that includes like Tess Roundtree, Allison Mitchell, Kirsten McDonough, Hannah Marshall, some players like that. How do you think volleyball has changed over the last decade? Why are we seeing so many of the recent players get up there and their offensive tech skills really shine?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think volleyball has definitely shifted on the women's side to a more offensive game, to where it's who can score more points to get to this spot. I think old school volleyball would say like defense wins, you're going to win on the floor. I've yet to find a way to score a point with a dig, right? So you've got to convert that into something. So I think as coaches, as we convert to more of an offensive mindset, we start to see that. You mentioned some big times names. Those are kids where I just described, where your entire game plan is designed around how you're going to beat these kids. As I looked at that list, Tess Roundtree stuck out to me as, we played Prin 3 times in the year that they beat us as the 4 seed. We were the 1 seed hosting. We beat them 2 out of 3 times. In the 3rd time hosting the conference tournament, our entire game plan is how you're going to stop Tess, and we just couldn't do it. We just couldn't stop her, So that's a real testament to how good Tess is and how next level she is. I know she went overseas to play professionally. So how cool is that? And I think Prince had the only 2 girls who have ever gone overseas to play professional. So kudos to Marianne. But those were fun times. And same thing for Kristen from Fontbonne, same thing for Hannah from Westman. When those girls just get in the zone and they decide they're going to go off, forget about a game plan, forget about a blocking scheme. Like, they're just going to score and beat you. And you just hope they get to the back row fast enough, right? So that's how you think about that. But yeah, definitely a shift to an offensive mindset. And it's more fun to watch. It's more enjoyable for the fans. So.
You just touched on it right there, and that'll be my last question for you. You just mentioned Marianne Sprague of Principia. We'll be talking to her next as one of the other 3-time Coach of the Year winner. Could you talk about Marianne a little bit at Principia?
Yeah, for sure. So Marianne's a dear friend of mine, and I would say that 9 times out of 10, I vote for Marianne as the Coach of the Year. I'm just blown away by the teams that she has and where they start in the season and what she's able to do with those girls along that road. Not only on the court, but just the positivity, the team chemistry. And like, that starts at the top. That starts with the coach. And she is one of the best coaches that I have ever seen that I play against, conference or non-conference. I'm so impressed with the game plan that she approaches. It's obvious that like, she's watched some film and sees what's going on, and she knows how to beat you and how to tell her teams how to do that. So I have had on years where I've had a lot better team than hers, and she's beat me. Right? So like, that's impressive. She finds the weaknesses. She's able to adjust quickly. And I just can't say enough good things about what she's been able to do over the years with that program. So she'll be greatly missed in the SLIAC. And yeah, she'll be missed. So.
All right, Tom. Well, that's all I have for you. Thank you for sitting down today and talking about the SLIAC all-decade volleyball team today.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, man. Take care.
All right. We are now joined by Marianne Sprague, former coach at Principia College. Marianne, thank you for joining us today to talk about the SLIAC all-decade volleyball team. I think that first we should start off by talking about arguably one of the best players in SLIAC volleyball history, a player you coached in Tess Roundtree. What made Tess so special?
Well, physically, she was so gifted. But when I met her, I knew where she was in her capacity. She had so much room to grow. She was a very emotional, but yet physically gifted player. So the college ranks gave her a chance to mature, and she's a smart academic person. So we just built in, we kind of tried to take the emotional down a little bit so that and use her IQ. And then she became amazing. She was always amazing physically, but then her understanding of the game kept growing. And, here's one little story, which will be fun. Her freshman year, it was obvious. The other coaches knew, okay, this kid can play. So Greenville comes into our house, and their entire game plan was every ball went to Tess. So wherever she was, even if she was hiding in the serve receive, and it didn't matter if she was on the 2-foot line, they were going to serve at the 2-foot line because she's a freshman and there's a lot of pressure on her. And, we always remember that because, Tess did a pretty good job, but every ball, I'd never seen such stick to a plan. And so that was just like the perfect mirror to her to realize that she was a standout and she would be picked on and she had to rise to the occasion. So I think it was just the perfect time for a maturation, and she was so teachable. And I think the group of young women that surrounded her on those teams just embraced yet challenged her. And one off season, we told her she couldn't work out with the team because we needed to to see her be more of a giver, more of the trunk of the tree. And she really took that to heart. And within a few weeks of training on her own, you know, she approached the team and said, I want this more than anything. So I think it was just a complete maturation and a love of the game and the IQ of the game. And you're right, she was special to watch and to coach.
Yeah, it's really special when you see those players with that talent, and then you see that mental part of the game meet together, and it really is something unique. So you had another player on the All-Decade team, more recent player, Sophie Hathaway. Can you talk about Sophia a little bit?
Sophia was like the inverse of Tess. You know, I looked at her and I watched her jump and I watched her run, and I'm like, wow, this kid has a pretty cool high school background, but how does this happen? And then magic happens. Every nanosecond of Sophia's athletic life. And, you know, her mom and I had gotten to know each other, and her mom said, there's just something about her on the court. And I was like, well, what mom doesn't say that? But from the get-go, and she was brilliant, and her mental capacities were so steady. And she had this, as wonderful of a person as she is to everyone. I mean, you've never met a nicer person. Once the game is on, I mean, her competitiveness combined with that IQ, I mean, I felt like a student at the feet of Sophia several times as she would, words of wisdom or whatever. And her calmness, I mean, because we had some spunky people on some of her teams, and to watch her, just her presence on the court, and it didn't matter. I mean, that kid played everything for me, and there's no way she should have been in the back row, but she just worked magic from everywhere. So I had no idea what amazing things were going to come out of her each day, and she trained hard too, and she really demanded a lot of her fellow teammates in sharing her wisdom. Just a tremendous insight of the game. Maybe the single best player I've ever coached in 25 years that just got it, and got the stuff that wins. You know, you got to get the stuff that highly correlates to a win. And she was stellar.
I think one of the things I'll remember about Sophia is when your setter went down, and Sophia, normally, you know, a hitter, outside hitter, you had to move her to setter, and she stepped in, true team player fashion, stepped in as your setter. So that just kind of speaks to that team player that she was. So.
Yeah, and I think she knew, once again, she and I were buddies in figuring out, because Prin always had to win in a little different way, and she and I agreed on those, and so as a setter what that meant, and once again, I mean, other teams would have thought, oh, this kid will be easy to shut down as a slower setter, but God bless her, she could deliver a soft, beautiful set from, you know, 20 feet off the court, so strong. So yeah.
Spalding University joined the league right around about a decade ago in 2009, and they had some early success with players like Eliza Berkman and Jessica Diehl. Can you talk about them? What do you remember about them on the court?
I remember thinking, I don't know what to do with Jessica Diehl. I mean, they were different players when they were together at a combo. It was, you know, I mean, that's what any of us just wanted, right? I mean, if you could have three amazing hitters in the front row, great. But with two, you can make the defense stutter. And oh my gosh, I mean, we've never been a big blocking team because that statistic doesn't correlate as highly with a win. But so with Jessica, we worked to get her greedy. You know, we tried to make her play defense. All we did, our offense waited, because our first offense when we played them was to clog up her roots or to make her play the first ball and then go in. So we needed her greedy. We needed her wanting the ball and demanding it from a setter that maybe wasn't the best one. And then we didn't have to quite so much block it as to know when to get out of the way and let the unforced errors happen. But she was tough. And then the other thing we did with her, which also it helped with her grittiness because she would get a little greedy, is when we'd make the setter play the first ball, so their secondary setter would have to try to set her, and most likely wouldn't, and then they'd force it. So our offense was just to take them out of their offense and then to be aware of the one time, because you still had to kill the ball. I mean, we can't beat them just on forced errors, but we had to kind of get that greediness going and that get their heart rate up a little, kind of in the wrong way. But then ultimately we had to figure out a way to put the ball down. So our first offense was taking them out of their offense. Our second offense was quickly putting it to a hole. And then Berkman, I mean, wow. She was such a focused, tough kid. And so really what we did with her is we tried to get them out of system, and then we'd zone block over there. And in some of those days, we had a decent triple block on the outside. So yeah, we would just, as soon as our job was to recognize when we thought we had them out of system, because holy cow, if we left Jessica Diehl, but when we got them out of system, then we'd just slide all of our blocking arsenal over there, and then we'd try to pick it up. And at that point also, so we'd try to overload on that, and then we would try to attack on two. We would try to speed up our attack so that the time between her contact and us putting it over on their side was at least 0.4 seconds faster.
Right.
So that was the only thing we had to do, but
yeah.
Tough kid. So they made life very difficult.
To two more players, Westminster College, Hannah Marshall and Kayla Reed. They kind of took that program for Westminster to that next level to where they're competing for championships. What do you remember about Kayla and Hannah?
Gosh, I have so much respect for Hannah. I told her every year, I was like, I would just love to coach you. And I mean, Kayla, the balls that she put up were just, I know I'd be reviewing film and trying to do it for my strategy, and I would just kind of get caught up and going, oh my gosh. She was really wonderful. With Hannah has this beautiful quality of being so thoughtful, and her sense of empathy for the game and her teammates. And so we tried to just get her out. We tried to make her better by taking her out of her comfort zone, and we made her play a ton in the back row, because she's so thoughtful that sometimes her thoughtfulness would make her stutter a little bit. And so we made her do everything in the back row, and we knew she could do it. So the teams that I coached, they're like, what good is this doing? She's having fun with them. Like, this is a long-term game. Mm-hmm. I mean, we have to do our part to be in the match, but this can take a toll on her as the match goes on. And, sometimes it did, sometimes it didn't. But she was such a great team player. She never demanded the ball, but they knew they loved her presence, and so they gave it to her a lot. So yeah, we just really made her play a lot in the back row. And then that sounds like you can't just say this, but we practiced, we have to pass her serve the first time. And so we planned every potential miss pass and what we would do out of system, mm-hmm. because you did not want that kid to get on a roll, you know? So, I mean, it sounds silly that you would, but I do think practicing and just knowing we're not looking for a perfect pass. We just have to get this puppy up.
Sure.
And then, you know, we knew when she was serving where everybody else was, and we had our 1, 2, and 3 way that we could get out of that serve. So, and so as you can tell with all of those, you're like, you never know if it's going to work, but that was it. And then, yeah, with Kayla, I'm afraid, you know, it wasn't too creative. We just wanted her to play a lot of defense, because then she was so good. That kind of made her mad as well. Not mad, but she wanted to set the ball, you know?
Right.
And, so we liked to make her either force her sets by where we put it, or someone else have to set. And that seemed to, so basically if you've ever seen or been a setter, you know, it's like you're going after the ball, but then you're retreating. You're just running a bunch of places for nowhere, and setters are not used to that, nor do they like it. So, I mean, that, you know, it wasn't incredibly, you know, brain surgery there. We just, you know, we just made her focus on the part of the game that she'd rather not focus on. Yeah.
What are some other players on the all-decade team that kind of you're glad you don't have to game plan against anymore?
Gosh, looking at that list, they're all amazing, but probably because Anna Finch is so new. I'm like, the kid just, you know, the only thing I can say, and we spent a lot of time together, and I said this to her face is, damn you, you know, like, you know, you watch her, she plays the game with such ease, and there's just a relaxed sense, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that in a presence. And, you know, you'd watch film on her and you'd do this and you're like, we can do this. We can contain her. I mean, but then she just always controlled the floor. And I think also she made her team better. She did have a presence, but damn her. I mean, it just didn't matter. And, you know, you would make them force a set and then she knew what to do. She just feels like she had eyes that could see everything. So super glad not to have to do that. Jenny Howard, when I saw her on the list, I was like, I don't know if I've ever met a more gritty player. I mean, it seemed to me she had the attitude, the confidence that I will not be denied. Sure. And she was one, like with others, where I say we try to push them out of their comfort zone and do more of what they didn't want to do. I had no idea what she didn't want to do. I mean, she's just like, just put the ball over here, you know? And so that grittiness, that just, I will not be denied. That's because as coaches, you look for little chinks, you know, and you look for what you can do. And I mean, I remember a few days that it wasn't her best day on the court, but I gotta admit, it had nothing to do with what we did to her, you know? And anyway, I think I was going to take another look at this list, but those are two. Right when I looked at them, I said sure. That. Yeah. You know, I know Jamie Schoenbrook. I hired her to come coach at my camps because that kid played so soulfully, just all in. And I thought, oh my gosh, if I can bring her in to coach young kids, to impart any of that soulfulness, because that's what makes coaching fun, you know, is when you see these kids just dig so deep and just love the essence of the game, the beauty of the dance and the choreography and the not letting the ball drop. So I have tremendous respect for her. And then, well, Katie O'Toole at Webster, just, I mean, it's obviously a mark of Mary's teams, but there is such a conviction, and a conviction with a growing sense of confidence, and a never backed down. So I feel like she was one that you just couldn't make her eyes drop to the ground, because I mean, most of us, as we're calling serves, as we're whatever, you just look for that kid who's like, or eyes drop to the ground. And she was one, I just felt she was so steady, and that led her to be excellent. Mm-hmm. Because sometimes the biggest part of being excellent is just not, it's like my golf game, as long as I don't get in the sand 4 times or whatever, this actually is like, I feel accomplished. And I feel like her steadiness and resolve and ability to keep her thought where she wanted really made her excellent.
Perfect. Well, perfect. I think it was great to hear you reminisce about those players and take some time and looking back at the all-decade team. We really appreciate your insight and wish you the best in the future. Thanks for joining us, Marianne.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Bye.